We're good. All right. We want to welcome Mr. Lucas Rodriguez here to the Olé Soccer Podcast. Excited to have you, Lucas, on with us. Talk about your journey. Talk about your playing history. Now transitioning into coaching. Grew up in Argentina. Moved to the States into the Kansas City area and grew up. So now transitioning from being a player to being a coach, and how he's now helping the next generation grow up and being able to teach them and guide them through his experiences. So we were just talking pre-interview here, pre-recording about his environment growing up in Argentina, his following of San Lorenzo. Looking forward to sharing his story. He's going to go ahead and get into it. So first and foremost, welcome, Lucas, to the Olé Soccer Podcast. How you doing?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure. Like you've said before, I'm originally from Argentina. I moved to the United States when I was 14 years old, and I came straight to Kansas City. We have family members here, so this is the first place we came to. Growing up in Argentina, I started playing up when I was 4 years old. I'm from Buenos Aires, from the capital. If you've never been, you know, it's the soccer culture is big. A lot of people don't understand what it really looks like. I always tell people that imagine if you had Washington, D.C. inside of New York City. It's just, everything is there. Everything you know, there's a ton of people. There is soccer stadiums every 20 blocks. There is soccer clubs for youth system, literally like every 10 blocks. And everybody kind of plays for their neighborhood at the beginning. I grew up playing in a local league. It's like 5v5, kind of very similar to futsal. And then you do that for like until you're about 10 years old, 11, and then you start getting into outdoor at the same time. So then you're training outdoor and five-a-side. And then depending on which club you're at, like you may have more or less practices. So for example, the five-a-side was about two practices a week, late at night, like 7 through 9 p.m. And then in outdoor, I played for Boca Juniors for 3.5 years, and we were training like 4 times a week. So between being 10 and about 12, I was having like 6 sessions a week and having 1 outdoor game a weekend and 1 five-a-side game a weekend. So I mean, literally ton of soccer. And then once you turn about 12, 13, then you leave the five-a-side because you're just too old. And then you start playing futsal. So then 13 and 14, I was doing the same thing, but just playing futsal and outdoor. And it was the same deal. I was traveling. I had to take 2 public buses to go to Boca Juniors outdoor training 4 times a week. I had to change schools because I used to go in the morning. Boca Juniors train in the morning, so I had to transfer to a afternoon school, which was, you know, tough at the time. I was very young. 2 public buses, and then I would take another bus from that training to futsal late at night. So again, you're playing 7 times a week.
Wow. That's definitely something that we compare that. If you were to compare, which I don't think you can, but if you were to compare to people now in the States, the way that they're thinking, let's say when pre-COVID, you could say, is like, no, like I don't want my kid to be doing that. You know, at least a lot of parents here, but the way it is in Argentina and other countries, like it's just the way it is, you know? The way it is. If that's what you want, then that's what you need to do.
That's the thing. You know, to me, the first thing to understand is I grew up in 1986. Argentina has just won the World Cup in Mexico. So ever since I can remember, it's soccer everywhere, like TV, newspapers, like, you know, you can breathe it, you can hear it, even when you don't want to, just people talking about family reunions, talking about soccer, Maradona, all over the place, graffitis. I mean, he's everywhere he goes, just, you know. Yeah. So growing up in that environment, you know, my dad used to play. He didn't make it to a pro level, but he made it to a reserves in a club named Ferro in Buenos Aires. So I had the soccer background in my family. And the first time I kicked the ball, I enjoyed the game. And through the culture of the streets, the stadiums, the country where I just won the World Cup, I mean, it was just, it was in my veins, you know? So then that's where I got the passion from. Like I used to watch, I remember in my house, we lived with my grandma, or my grandma lived with us, and she lived in a room upstairs. And when San Lorenzo will play on a Sunday, we'll be eating, you know, lunch, watching the game downstairs, and she'll be in her room locked up with the radio on, listening to the game. You hear her scream when they score, when they miss shots. So like, it was hard to avoid, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely something that everybody lives it. You know, everybody, you revolve your day around your team, you know, and even you can even say your life, you know, that's your life at times, you know, like revolving around your team, about team training. Throughout the week, you're talking about who are they going to play, what do they have, you know, who's healthy, who's not, what formations you're going to play, what the coach is thinking, how the interview went. So everything is building up to the game.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Even on five-a-side, you play on the weekends, and we, in that league, they play club against club. So, you know, it's my neighborhood club with my team against, you know, whatever club. And I have two brothers. One is older, one is younger. So when you go to the place where you're going to go play, the stadium, whether it's at our place or away, I was there literally 7 hours because my youngest brother had to play early. So we had to be there. And then 2-3 hours later, I would play. And then 2-3 hours later, my older brother will play. So I'm like running around the soccer club. We're eating lunch. Like we are there like a bunch of hours, you know what I mean? So
you're basically eating, breathing, living. You're just there. You're consumed by it. There's no way to get around it. So that's awesome. So talk to us about the difference. So you said you moved from five-a-side to futsal around 12, 13. So for those that don't know, and kind of educate us a little bit about the difference, what five-a-side is growing up compared to transition to futsal, and why you think they do that.
Okay, so the first difference, when you play five-a-side, is really 6v6. So you have 5 field players and the goalkeeper, where in futsal you have 4 field players and the keeper. The goalkeeper box in futsal is like a semicircle, where in five-a-side was like rectangle. So it's kind of like outdoor. The throw-ins you would do with your hands, where in futsal you kick it in. And then it was like the fouling rules. Like in futsal, you have to be very cautious about contact. Anything can be a foul. Where in five-a-side, you could slide tackle. You could, you know, be in contact. Just like an outdoor game on, you know, you play on some courts were like basketball courts with wood. Some courts were on cement. You know, some were on like tiles. Like it was hard floor, you know, with out of bounds, like no walls and stuff like that. So it has some similarities, but it was more of an outdoor game in a smaller space. And then the reason why that, I mean, I don't know why the reason, you know, I just kind of grew up and that's what we had. But I was recently talking to a friend from Texas, and he was telling me that he went to Brazil and Argentina. He noticed that the younger kids were playing five-a-side and futsal at a young age, and also doing outdoor. Like in Kansas City, for example, we only do inside stuff, like whether it's futsal or indoor, in the 4 months of winter because we can't be outside. So, you know, imagine being able to play futsal all year round while you're playing in outdoors. So now you're getting a lot more touches. And especially for the younger ages, that's why they have like an age restriction. When you get to about 13, you're too old, and then you got to focus more on outdoor or futsal. So then what happens is when the kids are done playing five-a-side, they go through outdoor futsal. And then if they don't make it in outdoor, they just kind of follow the futsal game and they play longer. Some kids enjoy more futsal than outdoor, so they just kind of go with that. And some kids, you know, just play outdoor. They're good. They make teams. They keep on making it. And they just kind of leave futsal aside and focus on outdoor. But between 10 and 13, 14, they're playing futsal and outdoor all year round.
And
then you watch the national team from Argentina or Brazil, and then you're like, oh man, these guys can handle the ball. Well, that's probably why.
That's of course, because you're in tight spaces. You have time to really, okay, I can control the ball. I can have a bad touch. No, you have one bad touch, you're murdered. you're done, and
Right.
no, you lose the ball, you have everybody, you have the pressure of everybody watching, you're representing your neighborhood, it's like there's so many things where there's no other way. Either you step up or you step up, right? And you got to learn fast, right? Yeah,
Right.
no, I obviously see.
Even for example, the five-a-side team that I play with, the name of the club was All Boys, and All Boys had a first division team, but they played in third division. So we were like, it's like a lot of the kids were just wanting to play up and eventually make it there. And some of these five-a-side clubs are the feeders into these outdoor teams. Like, for example, Boca Juniors has a couple of neighborhood clubs where they recruit from. That's where they get most of their kids. So you will play a certain club and you already know that's a bunch of River Plate kids because they play outdoor in River Plate and that's where they play five-a-side. So, if you play this other neighborhood club, you knew that they're the feeding club for Boca Juniors. So you knew all those kids played at Boca Juniors. So it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah. Yeah. And creating that competition, locally, I feel personally what I've, through doing more interviews and reading and just trying to travel a little bit more as much as we can, just realizing that locally is where we need to be able, at least here in the States I'm talking about, locally is where you need to be able to control, more of the environment, creating more small-sided games, which we can talk about in a bit. But locally, that's where people I feel need to focus more because the rest of the world already does that. They don't need to be traveling 2 hours to play a game or a tournament when they can just be playing local and everything's small-sided, right? So creating that environment, right, which you grew up in and people feeling pride for wearing a certain jersey, and representing that. But more importantly, representing, your neighborhood where you come from. So you can go home and be like, hold your head up high, when you play a good game.
Yeah, one of the things, the stories too, it's that when I was playing my neighborhood club, I actually played for like 2 or 3, because you can bounce around. You don't necessarily have to play for your neighborhood club. It just depends on, where you get recruited or whatever.
Yeah.
And when I joined All Boys, I was about 10 years old, I want to say, give or take. And Carlos Tevez had joined the club as well. And I was an 86, he was an 84. So he played with my brother and I played with his younger brother. So, when you're going back to the games on the weekend, depending on how good your team was on 86 or 87 or 85, you'll see a lot more gatherings. So like you'll go play on a weekend and Tevez, the 84s were good. So, when it's my game, there's a few parents standing by watching their kids and all that. But by the time Tevez, time was on, the place was packed. Like I remember I watched Carlitos play since, we were young. And one time he tackled this guy. Carlitos must have been like, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. And we're all watching, the place is packed, good game. They had a good team. And he goes in a 50-50 with this kid that was like 3 times his size. And it was in a closed gym. And when they tackled the boy, it sounded like a bomb. Boom, And then he ended up just taking a shot and just almost, it looked like he was going to rip the net. And so around that time, Carlitos was starting to people talk about him. And, he's always been good,
Yeah.
But then, the funny thing is people get surprised, when if they watch him, like, oh man, this guy's good. Or he's got a bomb on his right foot. Carlitos used to dribble. We used to have in the club like this ball made with sand. It had sand inside, and they would make some, random times, not every day, but you had to dribble this sand ball across the field back and forth. And Carlitos used to do that just for fun. So imagine this kid is like dribbling a sand ball for I don't know how long, how many times, and then he goes on a game, he just strikes a ball made out of air. I mean, just smashed it,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
It's just little things like that, It's I grew up in.
Those are little things that make a big difference, and you think about it, and us now as coaches, you kind of look back, I'm like, oh man, like now I can see why they did that, and why certain people are able even to do, put sand in a ball or to challenge kids to play with that ball, to do exercise with that ball. It's only going to increase their confidence and their ability to dribble. And like you said, when Davis just strikes that ball, forget about it. Oh, move out of the way. No, that's a great story. That's a great story. So he played at the same club as you and your older brother, I assume, right? Or
Yeah.
just you?
No, me, all my brothers, we play in the same club
Yeah.
in different age groups. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, nice, man. That's an awesome story. So,
I actually
you,
played it with Carlitos in Boca Juniors too, because we were playing in all boys 5-a-side for like 2-3 years, you know. And then he got taken to Boca Juniors. Soon after, I ended up going to Boca Juniors. So I remember that he was the only guy I knew. So I would go to training and he would be leaving the complex that he had done with training, and I would, you know, walk past him, say hi, because, you know, that, like I said, we knew each other from before. And he would be walking, you know, with Colocini and Mauro Boselli leaving the complex, and I'll be coming in, you know. So like I got to see him play at Boca Juniors Youth Academy a bunch of times, you know, for like about 1 or 2 seasons.
mm-hmm.
And then around that time, I left and I came over here.
Wow, oh, that's awesome. So talk to us a little bit more about the jump to, you know, from all boys to Boca Juniors Academy. How did that happen for you? What was it that attracted them? You know, and what created the path for you to make it there?
Okay, so that's a little bit of a long story. I'm gonna try to keep it short. So when you play 5-a-side, there was this club called Parque, and Parque was the feeder of Boca Juniors. One of the guys that used to be a scout for Boca Juniors, his name was Ramon Madoni, and he's the one that scouted Tevez. He had like Sorin, Cambiaso, like a bunch of players had gone through him because he used to work in our Argentina Juniors youth system, had Riquelme and all these guys. Then they brought him to Boca Juniors. And so, you know, Parque was beating everybody every year. They're number one. Like everybody knows this club is legit. They're it, you know. And one time we got to play against them in All Boys, and we beat him, like killed him 7-2. And he was pissed, you know, because that never happened in any age group. Like Gago was on the 86s at the time. Yeah. So we played him, we beat him. And then I ended up going I started outdoor in All Boys outdoor youth system. And then I went to Vélez Sarsfield. When I go to Vélez Sarsfield, I was there for about 3 months. And then one time after a session, I walk away and Madoni's there. Don't ask me why the Boca Juniors scout is a Vélez Sarsfield's complex, but he was there. And he remembered me from when we beat him 7-2. So he grabbed my dad in the parking lot and said, hey, I think you should come to Boca Juniors. So I looked at my dad. I'm like, hey, you know, that sounds great. So that's how I got recruited, because he had saw me in the 5-a-side before, and he must have saw me, I don't know, maybe training at Vélez Sarsfield. And that's how I went to Boca Juniors, and I was there for about 4 seasons. And it was tough because Boca Juniors, you know, it's changed my life, but in my lifestyle, changing school and all that, and having 4 trainings a week, it was far away from my house. But there was like 100 kids trying out like every 3 months. I mean, they got kids from all over Argentina. They were, at one time, I remember they brought like 15 kids from Japan. I mean, it was tough to stay on, for sure.
Yeah. And how important was it for you growing up in that environment as a player, you know, having that mindset of just making sure you compete every single day? You know, how did that shape you?
Well, I mean, you know, it helps you, you know, have perspective. I mean, at the time when I first joined Boca Juniors, obviously the family finds out, your uncles, your aunts, your cousins. They're like, oh man, my cousin is in Boca Juniors and all that. You know, people around the neighborhood, they know, you know, they see you go in the bus, come out of the bus, walk home and all that. But I grew up, I knew what Boca was. That's the thing. Like, one of the things that, you know, I already knew they were a, you know, top team in the country. So I knew what I was getting myself into. And even in every age group, they are like 3 teams. And they put like top team, second team, third team, and they put them to play in like 3 different leagues. And then they just move players up and down if they have to. So I'm not gonna lie, you know, if there was like 50 players within 3 teams in Boca Juniors, it's not like I was number 5. Like, they had a bunch of good players. Like, I was probably in the middle high. You know, Gago was part of the 86s at the time. He ended up making it. There's a couple other kids. One of them played in Ecuador later on and stuff like that. But you just the level, you know, the level, every training, the talent the kids had, you know, the way the coaches behaved around the kids and around, you know, like in Argentina. Now, one of the other things is you grow up being coached by ex-professionals all the time. Like when I was at Boca Juniors, they had like 4 or 5 coaches for every age group, and one of them was Colochini's dad. You know, he had he was part of the coaching stuff, and you learn, you learn, you try to be there the most you can, and a lot of the things are out of your hand. You know, like you may show up one day and they're like, hey man, you know what? Like we picked up somebody better, but that's just how it is. If at that level is survive and, you know, do the best you can until somebody else.
No days off.
No days off.
No days off. Wow. That's interesting, man. Yeah. And for you to play, you know, there, it says a lot, obviously, about you and obviously your talent and your hard work and dedication, but also, you know, the environment that creates. And just hearing it, you know, I always like to also kind of, like we talked about pre-interview, is have parents, players, coaches that are listening, that are watching, kind of get a perspective as well of what other countries do. You know, we're not talking about just, you know, any country, you know, no offense to any other country, whatever, you know, we're talking about Argentina. We're talking about one of the best teams in the entire world, you know, World Cup winners multiple times, that constantly develop players at the best levels internationally, you know. So when we're looking at something, you know, I want everyone that's kind of listening, even myself, and is what can we pick up from your story? You know, what are other academies around the world doing that is working? Why do we need to reinvent the wheel at times? You know, what if something's already working for them and it's producing year after year, generation after generation? We're not just any type of players, world-class players. You know, what environment are they creating? What mindset are they trying to have? And it's tough, obviously, to mimic that and that exact environment, you know, because of multiple reasons, the pathway to actual first team, et cetera, et cetera. We can talk about that. It's a whole different podcast for that. But, you know, what can we take and what can we create in our own environments, you know? So awesome, Lucas. Thank you for sharing that. And so at what age did you and your family move to Kansas City?
I was 14 years old at the time. So I joined when I went to high school here in Kansas City. I was a sophomore at the time. I joined as a sophomore in high school.
And moving to Kansas City, total like the world just down, from assuming the language to your family to the city to the culture, everything. What was it I'm assuming, you know, you had to gravitate towards where's soccer, you know, where's soccer. So how was that transition? Did you play high school soccer?
Yeah, I did. Actually, it was tough. You know, when I came, I only knew how to say hello. And we came with like 2 briefcases. So like we literally had nothing. So my dad had came like 6 months prior, got a place, got a job and all this stuff. And then we came later. He had already researched the area for the soccer clubs and all that. And then I went to high school. My dad was like, hey, here you can play soccer in the school. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Because in Argentina, high school, you don't play sports like that. And obviously, you know, one of the biggest things is I came from an environment where it was like super high at the time. And the difference in level was massive, you know. And then thanks to that, I actually started enjoying to play. I was having fun because to me it became very easy at the time, you know, a lot of the times, because in Boca Juniors, it's like every day your mentality is like, I gotta be on point, I gotta focus, you can't mess around. It's almost like you don't enjoy it until you make it, you know?
Yeah.
But when I came here, I didn't have that pressure. And so I really started just playing for fun. And while I was having fun, people were like, oh man, this kid is, you know? So I did play high school 3 years. I got All-American junior and senior year. And then I also played in college as well. Here in Kansas City, I started at community college 2 years. And then I transferred to NAIA school, Mid-American Nazarene University here in Kansas. Got All-American sophomore year in community college and got All-American senior year in NAIA.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. One key thing I think that I just kind of like picked up was it's coming from a different environment, come from a whole different world. Even you said that you enjoyed the sport more. Was it more of like the pressure's off, like eyes off, or was it just like just the new environment where you were just like allowed you to kind of like grow, as a person as well? Like, what do you feel was the key factor in you just maybe even like taking a deep breath and just, okay, now let's start again?
I think it goes back to the passion. I had that passion for the sport. I didn't really care about anything else other than playing soccer. And yeah, for sure, the weight off my shoulders to actually not have to, just play and have fun. And the other good thing that I was kind of, blessed with is that I had came from Argentina, being coached by ex-professionals. Checho Batista had me as a coach at one point as well. And then when I came to KC, the first coach that I had played in the Nigerian national team. So that was kind of like, okay, like I'm happy at least I have, because that's what I knew. I felt a lot better when I knew my coach had
Yeah.
played at a high level and I could learn things from him. And he let me play, but he was a great guy, one of the best coaches here in KC. And his son, played the U15 national team, US, U17s, U20s with Freddie Edu. So like when me and him played, it was like done deal. Like I didn't have to look. We had a lot of fun playing. I played up on his team. He's an 85.
Yeah.
His name is Will John.
Oh, nice. No, that sounds like a good experience as well, and good exposure for you. And then growing up in Kansas City, how's the soccer scene in Kansas City, growing up to try to make it in, let's say, at the higher level, whether it's university, whether it's obviously you also played in the NASL. So how was that for you as you started to kind of graduate up? How did that come
When
about
I
for you?
first came to Kansas City, there was no academy, there was no sporting DA or anything like that. It was just Kansas City Wizards, the top team. That's it. Maybe they had a couple of extra guys as a reserve. They used to train at the NFL stadium, at the Chiefs Stadium. When I came, I started playing. People started, some people started moving my name around. I was in ODP, regional team, national pool, all this stuff. And then finally, at one point, my friend Will John, he went to SLU University in St. Louis, only played one season, and then he got drafted by Chicago Fire, was there for a couple of seasons, then he got transferred to KC. So when he came back to KC, he was in the team, in the MLS team, and he invited me to come out and train. So I would go with him to the Chiefs Stadium, practice, but I was young. I mean, I think I was still in high school at the time. And, Bob Gansler was the head coach. There was a lot of guys that were just still playing, like Jimmy Conrad and Savagnin, that's, now the assistant coach of Sporting, a lot of great guys. I mean, so I would play with the first team or practice. I was practicing with them, but I was just a young kid. I'm sure they were busy focusing on their next game and stuff like that, and I always did that for like 4 or 5 years. I was in Kansas City every time I could, or somebody would invite me. I would go a couple of weeks here and there. Like I went back when Piojo Lopez was there, great guy. Santiago Hirsig. I mean, you name them. I've been in different moments, I should say, with different coaches to train, but I never really got an opportunity. I don't know if it was because I was small or I was young or they were just focused on something else. I remember one of the times I went to training, they were not doing great. So training was not fun, or sometimes you may go and they're like, hey, you know what? We can, like, I may not get in the drill or may not get in the scrimmage or whatever, which is fine, And so I just focused on college. And then once I graduated from Mid-America, I had gotten All-American and MVP of the conference at the time. So I thought, okay, like this could be my chance, but I didn't know anybody. Will was in Europe by then. And so I just worked. hanged out for like about 2-3 months. And then these coaches from Kansas City were doing a combine in Omaha, Nebraska. So they called me and said, hey, we're doing a combine. Come, we're going to have MLS coaches, some agents, some of the, all the Kansas City talent, like Matt Bisler, I think was, or Seth Sinovich from Sporting was there or whatever. So at the beginning, I was like, no, I'm not interested. I'm just working. I'm done. In my head, I'm done. So it was like a Saturday morning. Friday night, I'm hanging out and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go. So I grab the car and I go to Nebraska. It's like 3 hours away. I stay. I go to the movies, go watch a movie in Nebraska somewhere. I come back to the room at like 1 in the morning and I had to be up at like 7 for the combine. So I get up, we go, some MLS coaches were there, like Brian Bliss from Columbus Crew at the time, Bernice from Sporting, I think was there, and some agents. So we played, there was a bunch of guys that I knew from Kansas City. And then at the end, one of the agents pulls me aside and says, hey, I'd like to represent you. So I was like, okay. So I talked to him for about a month and I ended up signing with him. So then I'm still working. I'm in Kansas City. I'm just playing in the Mexican leagues, I did that a lot. And I think that's something that helped me as well. When I was even in high school, I was playing also in the Mexican leagues with like older guys. Some of them had played before in Mexico, in Honduras or whatever. And that actually helped me, get better as a player as well, because that's where I learned how to avoid getting kicked, how to jump ahead, and then once I went back to high school or whatever, or club, it was much easier. Somebody would kick me and be like, oh, I don't feel it. But anyways, so the agent calls me and says, I have a trial in St. Louis. They had a brand new team. Anelka, Nicolas Anelka, his brother was announced the head coach. So I'm like, okay, St. Louis is the closest team to my house. It was like 3 hours away. So I went, felt like I had a good combine. They didn't pick my name. And so I was like, okay, disappointed, go back to KC, go back to working. Then a few weeks later, he calls, my friend signs in Miami SC, one of my good friends in Kansas City. So I called him, I said, hey, I would love to play in Miami. The playing style, more Hispanic, something like that. I felt like that was my, I could have better opportunities. So he talks to my agent and they give me an opportunity to come out. I drive from Kansas City to Miami. It's like a full day for like a 3-day tryout. So I'm in Miami, very good players, very good talent. I think Victor Pastora was the head coach at the time, I think, yeah. And actually, so anyway, so I'm at the combine, I play, and then when I leave, the Pastora sends me an email, says, hey, thanks for coming. You look like a great player, but unfortunately, you have 3 guys that play like you. And it makes sense. I mean, there was some good Colombian players, Brazilians. I mean, I knew, And that year, I was playing attacking mid. My buddy had signed as an attacking mid, and that year they signed one of a top Argentinian, talent at the time. So there was no space for me. So I came back. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done. I went to 2 tryouts, didn't make it. So then my agent calls me and says, I have Minnesota. It's a brand new team. They're switching from Thunder to Minnesota Stars to the NASL. So at the time I said, no, I'm not interested. I'm not going. I don't want to go fool myself again. So I didn't go. They gave me a date. I didn't show up. So I stayed working. Then he calls me again. He's like, hey, 3rd division, USL, Harrisburg, and River, and somewhere out there in the East Coast. And I was like, I had heard from some people that USL at the time was like not great money, the way they travel. So I wasn't interested too much, but at one point I was like, okay, I'll go to Harrisburg. He made it sound like it would be easier for me. And then like a week before I was supposed to go to Harrisburg, he calls me again and he says, I talked to Minnesota. They're willing to give you a second chance. So I started looking at the map. I'm thinking Minnesota is 8 hours. Harrisburg is like 14 or whatever. So I'm like, I'll save some money if I go to Minnesota. So I go to Minnesota, and one of the players that had signed had played an ODP regional team with me. He was the only guy I knew, and he was very good from Belarusia. And we were just knocking it, ping, 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 ping. And then, you know, everybody was like, how are you guys playing like that? I was like, we played together before. And they invited me to preseason. Then I came back, lived in the dorms. And then within 2 weeks, I signed my first contract. And I played there for about 4 years. And I played in 2 championships, one in 2011. And I ended up beating, you know, the other clubs that I didn't get a chance on. So it was kind of an interesting story.
Wow, man, that's a great story, because you constantly were looking for opportunities, and of course your agent did a good job of continuing to feed you more opportunities, but you didn't stop analyzing, like, all right, weighing your option. I think at one point you also got to know what you know, where you feel comfortable, and also measuring also the situation you were in, right? You said, even, should I drive 14 hours or drive 8, right? And what, at least here, since everything in the States is like so spread out, you know, or you really need to drive those distances, or if not, fly, or whatever the case may be, right? But you were constantly analyzing what would be best. How do I, and at times you didn't feel like, you know what, you even skipped that first thing. Like, nah, I'm not right now. You know, I think you will know when your time is up to actually either continue, or, you know, hey, let me just take a quick break, let me regroup, and then, you know, put myself together, and then let's go again, right? So it's a constant battle, right? And I feel like that's how life is, right? Life is like constant battle of like ups and downs and ups, and then wow, and then boom, right? And you constantly, and how draining was it for you just to go through that mentally? How many times do you say, you know what, this is it, you know?
Well, you know, it was tough because, you know, at the end of the day too, like I was working. So one of the reasons why I couldn't go the first time was just money related, you know, and asking for permission at my job. Because every time I went, I would ask for permission and leave for a few days. It wasn't like I quit my job or whatever. And my parents too, they you know, they work hard, but we didn't have money to, you know, my parents didn't send me anywhere. They would like drive me or, you know, help me out. They always been very supportive, but we were all hustling at the time. And so it was, for me at the time, I knew I loved the sport because I played it my whole life. And I also knew that it was about being a little lucky. And, you know, some people know people, some people get lucky more than others. And, you know, but in my mind, I was like, I believed in my talent, but I knew that it wasn't just my talent that was going to get me the opportunity. It had to be a couple of things had to align. Like in Minnesota, I also got lucky because when I didn't go the first time, it was like a combine of about 30 to 40 players. When I went the second time, there was only 7 signed players and about 10 kids they were looking at. So actually me skipping the first time, it was better for me to go the second time because it was only a fewer players, so they would see me more. So it's just kind of those things that you never, you know, it's just, it was draining. But at the time, I was okay with, you know, you have to be okay with, if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, because you don't have another option.
Yeah, of course. No, that's great. That's a great story. And then now fast forwarding, so now you went ahead and you got selected for the U.S. Futsal National team, right? They invited you to a camp in Chicago. So was that something you were looking for, or something that kind of like just happened to, you know, you just stayed ready and you say, hey, it happened, or was it something you were shooting for?
So what happens with the national team is that I also played, when I signed my first contract in Minnesota, around the same time, the Kansas City Comets hadn't had an indoor team for like the last 7-10 years or whatever, because Kansas City had the Kansas City Comets since the 70s. They played forever and then they stopped. All of a sudden, there was no Comets for like about 10 years. So the whole time I was here, I think I went to see them twice. With my dad took me, I thought it was kind of weird. They played in an arena with music and stuff. And but then they were gone. So then when I signed in Minnesota, they announced the Comets are back. And I knew people in Kansas City at the time, before I went to Minnesota, I had played for a semi-pro indoor team here locally, and Vlatko Andonovsky was the head coach. So I had played with him. He had coached me there. So then when I was in Minnesota, I called him. He was going to be involved with the indoor team because he had played indoor himself professionally. So he helped me connect with the new coach. And then when the outdoor season was over, the indoor would start. So I came back home, and then I made the team. So then for 4 years, I was 8 to 7 months in Minnesota, 4 or 5 months in KC, playing all year round professional soccer. And both coaches would give me about a week for vacation. And one of the funny things is when I was in Minnesota, I made it to the championship twice. So I was late to preseason here. And when I was playing indoor my first 4 years, we made it to championship twice. So I was late to preseason over there too. So it was kind of an interesting, moving like at one point, I didn't even unpack because I knew I was going to have to move back to Minnesota in 4 months. So it was kind of a weird moment. So when I played indoor, the national team, futsal national team coach was Keith Tozer. He was the national team coach for like 25 years or more. Great guy. And I played against him in indoor many times. And he would ask me random times, hey, come play for a national team. But I wasn't a citizen yet at the time. So time goes by to about last year, 2 years ago, I become a citizen. So I called him. I said, hey, now I'm interested because I played futsal growing up. I love futsal. It's a fun game. And a lot of my Comets teammates had gone through the national team. It was like 4 or 5 of them. They'll go to Argentina, Brazil, travel all over the world, play qualifiers, CONCACAF. And I'm like, I want to do it. And so, but then US Soccer announced they're going to change the coaching staff. And they hadn't done any trips for about the last 3 years, which was really weird because before those 3 years, they would go every time, always, somewhere, always. But for 3 years, they didn't do anything. So I became a citizen, nothing for 3 years. So I'm like bummed, I'm like, I've been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. So they announced a new coaching staff. So the new coach, his name is Dusan. He's from Serbia. He was in the Serbian futsal national team. Super, super great coach. He knows about futsal very much. And he made his assistant Brazilian coach named Pablo. And Pablo played indoor. So Coach Dusan lives in Minnesota, and he hasn't been in US for, I think, more than 4 years. So he had Pablo get the talent together for him to see. And I played against Pablo like all my indoor career. And so he invited me. The first time we were going to have a game in Miami at the Marlins Stadium against Brazil, Argentina, US, Mexico. It was going to be 14 nation, in Miami. First game, US, Argentina. Second game, most likely US, Mexico. And Argentina said they're going to bring all their top European players. Brazil did too. So I'm thinking first game could be Argentina and Miami. And I mean, I've seen these guys on, real games in Europe and stuff, they're legit. Yeah. And so I get ready. And then within a week of the event, they canceled it because of some hurricanes. So then they changed the camp. And I was working at the time at the club at Kansas City. And they had allowed me to go to Miami because it was international friendlies. Yeah. So it could be my first cap. But when they changed the camp to Akron, Ohio, there was no friendlies. So I knew my boss was not going to be like, okay, I let you go to play Argentina, but if you choose to, because it's like weeks, a week at a time. Yeah. So because of work, I couldn't go. So then they go to Philadelphia, I think, after that, and then they end up going to Chicago, and then Chicago was the closest camp to me, so I went, met a lot of great guys. One of the good things is before the futsal national team was 90% indoor players. Now it was like 50-50 indoor players and some guys that play futsal all year round in New York, Cali, Texas, you name it. There's futsal leagues for adults, and there's teams and there's very good players. So I met a lot of great guys at camp. Some guys I knew from indoor. We played some local teams. Had a very professional environment. Loved it. And then I came home. When I came home, I was still working, and now I'm playing indoor. So season starts, I had put on my, so then they go to Dallas after that. They go to San Francisco. They invite me. I just can't go because I'm playing indoor like this. I'm under contract, and most of the indoor guys could not go. So I missed those 2 camps, and then they go to Serbia for international, tournament or friendlies or whatever camp, and they invite me. But again, I'm in indoor. My family, like if they went for like 14 days, so like I have 2 kids, my wife's got to watch 2 kids, I'm working with the club, coaching, and I'm playing indoor. So it was like a lot on my plate. And as much as I wanted to be there, I just, I couldn't, it was tough, especially with being under contract, Yeah. So then we were getting ready, the group of guys that go, they play, they did actually pretty good. Have a lot of friends on the team because I'm not technically in the team. If anything, I'm maybe in a pool or something. Yeah. And so then the qualifiers were supposed to be this year in Guatemala for CONCACAF, and then the World Cup in Lithuania. Then the virus comes out, and they postpone it to next year. So now, because the coaching staff has taken over the last 4 months, so they didn't have a lot of time to create a team, build a team, work with them. Yeah. So it could be a good thing for U.S. soccer futsal national team to have this postponed for a year, so then they can get the group together more often. I know they're going to do more camps this year, some international camp, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, wow. Oh, that is definitely an interesting story, and congratulations to you for sticking with it and for continue to work on yourself to always stay ready. From listening to what you're saying and listening to your story, you constantly, even though things at times have not gone your way, the way that you wanted to at times, but you constantly stayed ready. You stayed training, whether it was with the indoor team or whether it was with, either in Kansas City or in Minnesota. You constantly just were working on yourself and we're waiting for either an opportunity to present itself or, that's not the right moment. Right. But one thing I think the viewers, the players, the coaches, the parents, even that, we can't just stop. If this is something that you really want to do, you got to continue to evolve. You got to continue to train. You got to continue to improve yourself, because when the opportunity will present itself, right? An opportunity that you're waiting for, if you keep working towards it, it will present itself. But if you're not ready for it, right? If you're not working towards it, it's just going to go right by you. It's going to go right by you. So now you said you coach in Kansas City's. I believe you coach at 08 girls. So girls that are 11.
Yeah.
And how has that been transitioning from player to now coach? How do you see that for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've been doing, the coaching and playing for a long time. Since I was first in Minnesota, I started coaching in a club in Blaine, Minnesota while I was playing. I did that. And then I worked some Corver camps in Minnesota as well. So learn how to kind of work in a different setup because, one thing is a team, the other thing is working in a camp. And then I went to Jacksonville. And I played there, and I coached in Jacksonville Armada's, youth system. Met some great people, good friends. They allowed me to just, help them out coaching, because their problem was I was under contract as a player, and I told them I want to coach. I enjoy coaching. I've been coaching. I want to grow as a coach, but they can't really offer me a contract because they don't know if I might be gone in 7 or 8 months, or at the time, I think I was dealing with indoor too coming up. So they knew I was probably going to leave. But they allowed me to coach and help out. And I learned a lot. And I actually had our Argentinian coach in Jacksonville that had coached in Barcelona B. And now he coached the Bolivian national team. Universidad de Chile, won the championship in Chile. He's Atlas in Mexico. It's great coach. We stay in touch still. And so I always been around playing and coaching. And one of the things is, that I always tell families is I always would ask 3 questions, right? I think I heard Blatko Andonovsky is the women's national team coach now. He was my coach in indoor. I know him well. Great guy. Learned, very professional. And, he said, I believe one time it was like, when you're looking for coaches, typically you should see if they played at what level, because typically if you play the game or you play at a higher level, you might be able to relate some stuff to the player out of your experiences as a player. And then the other thing is the coaching education. Are they interested in doing courses? When is the last time they did their course? Are there, maybe they don't have a high license, but I have a lot of friends that are like, I want to get higher. That's great, and then, how long have they been coaching? Is coaching their main focus? Is it their passion? Or they just, I have another job and I just coach because I have free time type of thing, So those are usually the questions that I feel like I have I have things that I could teach kids, because I feel like my story is more of I always done what I could with what I had, I always done the best that I could with what I had. I didn't play on the best team in high school. I didn't play in the best D1 school in the country. Even when I went to the indoor league and I went to the NASL at the time, we weren't the best team. Like, yeah, we won championships, but we hustle all the way up and we battled it out. But it wasn't like on paper we were that team. So it's just little things that I feel like in this country you have soccer is growing. You have people from a lot of different cultures, and just trying to put my little piece of sand in the box so we can help the kids out and improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your experience, and absolutely, and going back to your story, yeah, I definitely see that as well. And it's something that I think us as a culture where usually we come from, right? Like Latino America, we all come from very humble beginnings where it's like we have to battle, we have to scrap, we see it, we live it. And it's in everyday life where it becomes you know no other way of just trying to do your best with what you have, and which is obvious story. And I feel like a lot of the times it needs to go hand in hand, because if you're able to reach in anything, whether it is a career in in engineering, whether it's a soccer career, whether etc., you can't rely just on your natural talent. You cannot. You got to have both. You got to have the hard work and you got to have the talent, and it can't just be hard work and then not much talent. You know what I mean? It needs to be a good balance, but the hard work aspect, it's key, especially as you start moving up. What's going to separate you, from you being picked, and a lot of the times people are just a lot more talented than the average person, but a lot of times those talented players are not willing to work. There's a lot more you can do. We could work a lot harder, to surpass those players. So obviously, great work.
Believe me, I've seen a ton of friends that are very good soccer players and wish that they could have made it higher and they never got an opportunity. And then I've been on teams where I'm like, I just don't see sometimes, it's not that you're better, but you just don't see how that kid made it, and so, it's like any job. You go to, my any office setting, I'm sure they have the same deal. They're like, I don't know how this guy got this job. And then you have this other friend that is looking for a job and she's got all these great qualities, because even now, like when I right now I'm more of a veteran and I'm more trying to focus a little more on coaching. And I didn't just stop playing and say, okay, I played, I won things, I'm going to just get all these coaching, jobs and get higher up, MLS, whatever. The reality is not. A lot of people don't care what you did, who you are, if you played or not, or if you won. So then, then I started looking into the coaching aspect and the licensing. So within like the last 3 years, I went from a D license all the way to an A license. Now I have an A license. And even now, you're like, man, this guy has an A license. He played, it's still, now it's about kind of like what opportunities present.
Yeah.
Maybe who you know.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
No, absolutely not. No. And I definitely hear what you're saying. And I think there's a there's maybe it's an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that on the opportunity for people like yourself, coaches like yourself, and similar that are really trying to, you've done everything you need to do, getting your license, to a good playing background and development history. Now, what else does it need to take in order for you to move up, right? Like what, I think that's a different, we can definitely touch on that, soon. I'd like to definitely touch on that with you. But I want to bring it back to what you're saying with your teams. How much of what you learned as a player do you implement you as a coach, when it comes to small-sided games, when it comes to, creativity and tight spaces? Do you use a lot of that, or is it something that maybe your club, you follow more of like what the club must, a curriculum that the coaches and the club needs to follow? How much of that is influence for you personally?
Well, I try to do a little bit of both. I do follow the curriculum. The club has been growing in that aspect. They've been implementing new ideas. It's getting stronger. It's getting better, when it comes to like curriculum and coaching stuff and stuff like that. And yeah, obviously you want to bring your experience into the drills, but that's one of the things I learned at the course, because as a player, even if you ask me, hey, do you remember all these drills? The reality is I don't, because I was just a player. I was just focusing on, my technique and what do I have to do next, just like every other player. But when you go to the course, that's what I really learned, how to, be more organized, how to be, organize my sessions ahead of time, the season ahead of time. And then, yeah, I have to get creative, look at the topic that I want to work on, and then try to think about my what I experienced as a player. Because another thing I used to hate as a player is doing boring drills. Like you put a cone here and a cone there and say go back and forth. I'm sorry, I can't do that more than once. So I think about the players a lot. I always try to change the drill. I try not to repeat. And I'm not saying this is good or bad. This is just the way everybody's got their own way of working. But I'm just saying that's where I think my playing experience helps me as a coach, because I try to think about, the players and try to be creative with, let's teach this topic. I remember this particular session, or I know, a good teammate that played this position did it very well, and try to adapt some things, some movements, some, things like that into the drill. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, just trying to learn and get better, Yeah,
of course. That's the only way we're able to continue to evolve, just like you evolved as a player, right? Continue to improve and look for opportunities. Same thing. I feel like the coaching community as well. You need to continue to try to learn from other people, whether it's other coaches, whether it is coaching courses, whether it's videos, whatever we can do, talking to other coaches. And this is a great way of, these podcasts are created, for us to all learn, from coaches to players to parents, So talking to parents, you're now obviously you've been coaching for a while, been playing. What advice would you give to parents that are watching right now and listening, as their kids are growing up through, let's say a 10-year-old trying to make it, they have a vision of trying to play at a higher level, what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing is, I would say, you have to make sure you don't force anything on the kids. Because the first thing for me as a player, especially at that age, 10 years old, you have to have fun. You have to enjoy what you're doing. At that time, when I was 10, I was just happy to play and enjoying the game. It wasn't about too much about the coach. It wasn't too much about the drills. It wasn't too much about the games, the score line. It was about me kicking a ball, And so the number one thing is you have to recognize if the kid is passionate about the sport, because there is some 8 years old that you can tell, man, they enjoy this. Like my own son, he's 6 now. I don't force him to kick the ball an hour every single day. If he wants to play, we play. If he doesn't, it's okay. Like you have to find out what kind of kid you're dealing with, because some kids you can kind of see and tell that you don't know if they're quite, 100% in the sport yet, which is fine. But I
Yeah.
think the first step is identifying that is you have a kid that just loves it and was kicking the ball at home for no reason, or is it a kid that just comes to practice and you have to kind of push them? So then after that, I would say just make sure you sit back and just enjoy watching them play and have fun, because that's what it has to be at that point. Let the coach do the coaching. And, you know, I see videos of Messi and Suarez watching their kids on Barcelona all the time. They're just sitting, you know, chatting about they're not on top of the coach on the sideline, you know, the eyes are just staring at the coach or the player and, or do this, do that. So
Yeah.
in Argentina, you do have parents that do yell a lot, like whatever it may be, to you, to your kid, to the other kid, you know, but it's a different culture, and especially depending the level. But here, I mean, I feel like that's where we have an opportunity to maybe do things differently, you know, because it's not, I'm from Argentina, but that doesn't mean that in Netherlands they don't do some things good, and in Italy and all this, in Mexico
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So just kind of one of the things that I feel like we can do here is just pick little good things from everybody else,
Yeah.
you know, not just one place. So like that's one thing that I like here is that the parents are a little more laid back than back home, you know, for the most part.
Yeah.
And just allow, you know, just allow the kid to enjoy the game and have fun watching. You know, my dad used to take me places, and, you know, if I talked about something, he would open up and he played. He could have just yelled at me and say, "Oh man, I can't believe you did." Never. I mean, he knew I liked the sport. If I made a mistake, it didn't matter. It was my journey. You
Yeah.
know, he let me go through whatever I had to go through. When I had to play, when I was sitting on the bench, when I got cut from teams, I mean, he just let me go through my own journey. And I was just supported, always support. You want to go here? Let's go here. You have to go there at what time? I'll take you there. But other than that, that was a wrap.
No, great advice, Lucas. Thank you. And lastly, for coaches, you know, you're obviously moving up in the coaching world, and you know, live in Kansas City area where, you know, a lot of the U.S. Soccer Federation, you know, kind of meets and host their courses and so forth. What advice would you give to coaches coming up, you know, on trying to improve the game? What can we do better in the coaching community to improve this game here in the States?
Well, you know, one of the things is exactly that, the coaching education. I mean, I went through the process. I had a good time. It was a great experience for me. I met a lot of great people. I learned just as much probably from the candidates than what I got from the course. And you have some great people involved as well. You know, I would just say just because before I did my first course, I was like, no, I'm not interested. I don't know anything about it. And then I would, on the other hand, I would hear people kind of making a scary thing. Oh man, it's so hard. And I know that in the past, it seems to have been harder for whatever reason, but they changed the curriculum not too long ago. And I went through the new process, and it was great. I mean, and I tell my friends all the time, and I have other friends, coaches that help me through the process, and I still bug them and I ask them questions, and, you know, they show me what they're doing in Miami and what they're doing in San Antonio and stuff like that. And you're just trying to pick up. Don't be afraid to reach out and talk to other people, because maybe you don't feel comfortable communicating with another coach what you're doing, but there is a lot of people that have been through it and have a ton of experience, and they're willing to help. And people that don't even, that there is good people. I mean, like I said, I people from everywhere, all over the United States that I met. And I can tell you every single one I reached, whether they were in MLS Academy or they were in a little club in Texas, all very good, helpful hands, you know. And that's how I feel like, through those connections and putting yourself out there, you know,
Yeah.
don't, oh, I know, you know, I know what I'm doing and I don't need to talk to other people. You'll be surprised. There's people are doing, you know, you can always take something good from everybody that will make you better.
Yeah, of course. I agree. Great advice, Lucas. Well, it's definitely been a pleasure. We want to thank you again for being on the podcast. I hope the listeners and the viewers are able to take a lot from your story. I know I did personally, and I hope to continue to raise the game here in the States. You know, and that's our ultimate objective here. I know one of the reasons why we're we're having these podcasts, you know, is because we need to find, just like you said, you need to find different things from different places and create it and create your own and see what works, see what doesn't, and just try to improve the sport as much as we can. So appreciate your time. Good luck with the move. I know you said you're moving, and keep up the awesome work. You know, I hope to stay connected and hopefully one day cross paths on the field.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you for having me. You've been doing a good job. I mean, doing this is what connects people too, you know, so I think this is a great idea. You know, and in KC is competitive, and, you know, that's one of the things is Kansas City soccer is, you know, one of the top 5 cities in the nation when it comes to competitive soccer, and it's tough. You know, there's a lot of competition, and in California and LA, I mean, you have a ton of talent. I mean, every kid I've seen from Cali is good. I mean, I've seen, you know. So I know it's not easy for you guys out there, the competition, but at the end of the day, it has to be healthy, you know. It has to be healthy, and it has to be for the kids. So I'm sure you guys will figure something out and continue to do what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucas. All right. Have a good one.
All right.
Stay
You
safe.
too. Thank you.